everyone, and welcome to our National Payroll Week session on starters and leavers in Sage 50 Payroll. I'm Sarah and I'm joined by Duncan, and today we're going to walk you through everything you need to know from adding new employees to processing leavers. And don't forget, attending the session will count towards your digital badge as well. So I'm going to take you through new starters, so information you need and the options to add new starters, submitting them on the FPS as well. And we'll also look at some common questions and top tips. I'll then pass you over to Duncan, who will run through how to process final payments and the different options to process leavers, submitting them on your full payment submission, some questions and top tips, and then some further support and any questions at the end as well. So let's get into it for starters. So information that you will need for new starters. So you will need personal details. They're going to be really important as that's what's going to be matched to HMRC's records. So things like full name, address, date of birth, gender, national insurance number. You've then got things like payment details. So pay elements, are they going to have the same pay elements as other employees? What's a rate of pay going to be? How many hours are going to be contracted to work for yourselves? And then last but definitely not least, we have the starter form. So the main two starter forms that you'll be dealing with is the P45 and then the starter checklist, which is previously called P46, and that's what it'll be called in 50 Payroll as well. So they're going to be the two that you'll most commonly use. We do have P46 Pen and P46 Expat. That's for pension pay-as-you-earn schemes or foreign nationals, but they're going to be far less common, and it might well be that you don't come across these at all. So let's take a look at the starter forms that you can get. So we've just got a couple of examples here on the slide. So on the left, we've got the P45. That'll be from the previous employer. You will get part 2 as a new employer. That's going to give you the employee's personal details and also any information about previous total pay to date or total tax to date. We'll give you some information around student loans, but you will have more information on a P46 around that, or the starter checklist. So the starter checklist is on the right. That again will give you a lot of the information, so the employee's personal details. It will then ask you to complete a statement on there. It will have some further information about student loans as well, so things like plan type. So let's take a little look at adding new starters in the payroll, and we'll jump into 50 Payroll now to have a look at a bit of a demo on that. So I just want to show you a couple of previews of the different starter forms you can get. So we've got the P45 first. As I explained earlier, you will get part 2 of the P45 as a new employer. So this is the one that you'll be looking at, just a little bit of an example here. You can see it's got all of the employee details, total pay to date and tax to date, to allow it just to calculate tax a bit more correctly that first time round. So if you can get this, that would be ideal. We've then got the starter checklist. So you would give this if the employee didn't have a P45 for the employee to fill out. So they can pop all of their personal details on there. And it will also give them the option to choose a statement, which will then dictate what tax code it's going to put them on in that first period on your payroll. Now, in terms of student loan, it will have a little bit more information on the P46 or a starter checklist. So you can see it will actually specify which plan type that they're on as well. So if they do have a student loan, it might well be that you get your employee to fill out a starter checklist as well as the P45 if they have it, just so you know exactly which plan type to put them on straight away. Now, there are a couple of different ways to add employees in Sage 50 Payroll. So if we go to employee down the left-hand side, now a bit of a top tip on this one, if you have an employee that you may be replacing or an employee that's going into the same job role, you can actually copy over some information from an existing record. So if my new employee is going to have the same pay elements, the same frequency, and I want them to go in the same department as one of my employees, so I'm going to pick employee number 5. You have that employee highlighted. When you go to create a new employee, then it will use that information. You will have the option to base it on that existing record. So if I go to employee in the bottom left, you can use quick employee or the employee wizard. I'm going to use quick employee today, but we will just take a little look at that employee wizard to see the different options that you get. If I click on employee wizard, you can see you've got 3 different options depending on what you're wanting to do. So you can record it from scratch. You can create an employee record based on an existing employee, which is what I would be selecting today. Or if you've got a leaver that came back, you could also re-employ an employee. You would just want to have their leaver record selected when going into the employee wizard option. Now, I'm not going to use the employee wizard today. I'm actually going to use quick employee. And you can see the messaging is a little bit different when you go into quick employee. So it says, do you want to base your new employee on an existing record and copy over information? I'm just going to say yes to that. And what you can see here is it's actually brought across some information. So it's brought across some payment names in the bottom right there. And it's also put them into the same department as the record that I've selected. So I'm just going to start filling out my employee details. I'm going to pop in a surname and forename. Pop in an address. Now, if you don't have all of this information at hand straight away, it is only the fields with this little star next to them that you have to enter to save the record. So if there is any other bits that you need to come back and enter, don't worry about them if they don't have a star there, because it will still allow you to save the record. And pop in a right to work check in here and put any details. Start date. And then we get on to the employee provided form. So you can see that the P45, when that's selected, you put start and declaration in, and then you can put the previous employment details below. So that'll include the total pay to date from the previous employment and the total tax to date and the tax code as well. Now, I don't have a P45. They have actually given me a new starter checklist. Now, remember, in 50 payroll, that's still called the P46. So you can see when you select P46, it does get rid of a lot of those additional fields, because obviously you're not going to have previous tax to date or previous tax paid to date. The employee will have just filled out a start and declaration. And my employee has selected statement B. And you can see that will automatically populate the relevant tax code depending on the statement. So if I changed it to A, you can see it gets rid of that week 1 month 1 flag. And C, it will change it to a BR, none. So if they haven't filled out anything for the statement, then you can see it'll change it to 0T week 1 month 1. So I'm going to change it back to B. Pop in my NI number and category. Now, at this point, you can select to continue student loan deductions or postgrad loan, and you can select your plan type as well. My employee doesn't have any, so I'm going to leave those as no. Now, if you don't use the Sage 50 Payroll Pensions module, you can assign a pension scheme at this point. However, if you do use the pensions module and you use the pension assessment, then you want to leave this blank, because when you run your first assessment for your new employee, that will automatically put the scheme in the record. But if you do want more information on that, we do have a pension webinar at Wednesday at 10 in the morning as well. So make sure to get signed up for that if you haven't already. As I mentioned earlier, so it's pulled through my payments, so I'm happy with those. I want those in the record. And then I can save and clear. You can see that's added my new employee at the bottom of my list. So that's it on adding the new starters and the different ways you can add them in Sage 50 Payroll. What we'll do is we'll take a little look at a bit of a recap. You can see we've briefly looked at the employee wizard and the different options you get when selecting a record. And then we've went through the demonstration and added on new employee with the quick employee option. So what then happens when you go and submit on your FPS? So once created, you'll process the first payment as usual. You might need to manually adjust it if they're not being paid for the full period. And once your records are all updated, they'll be included on the FPS. What we'll do is we'll just run through a little bit of a demo just so you can get a bit of a feel of how that looks when you do come to eventually submit your first FPS for your employee. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight all my employees. I've got my processing date selected. I'm going to go to my new employee. And they've done 100 hours this month. So if I update my records, and then I can go to do my first FPS. Now this won't come up for you. This is just because we're in a demo environment today. And what you can see, if you continue through the full payment submission, I go down at the bottom, you can see that employee 11, my new starter, has got their start date in that particular column. So it's going to flag them as a new starter in that first full payment submission. So I can just go ahead and get that submitted, and that will inform HMRC that they've started on my payroll. And if the HMRC do have any updated information, you can send me that, and I can either retrieve it through my IR secure mailbox or check on the government gateway. I just want to run through a little bit of a recap of the FPS. So as we've just seen in the demonstration, there are a few things that get submitted to HMRC. Now, the main one that you're going to see on that important information window is the start date. Now, what goes through in the background more so, things like the address. So that links in with those personal details that you do want to make sure are all correct. You start a declaration and student loan indicator if they've had one as well. So all of that will go across, although you might not see it in that important information window. Some of those bits will go through on the background of the submission. So let's take a little look at some common questions around starters. So question number 1, what if the date they left their previous employment on a P45 is in a previous tax year? So once you enter the leaving date from the P45, you won't actually be able to enter previous pay and tax as it relates to an earlier year. So it'll grey those fields out. If it's towards the start of the tax year, so before 25th of May, you'd use the same tax code as the P45. Or if it's after the 25th of May, you can choose the P46 option and get them to fill that out instead. But if you do want more information around that, make sure to get the handouts downloaded and you can follow the link for more information. Question number 2, what if an employee does not have a P45 or a starter checklist? So as you've seen in the demo earlier, you can actually choose P46 and then start on declaration none. Would advise you get them to fill out at least a starter checklist as soon as you can, because as you've seen, it will put them on an emergency tax code. So sooner you get that information, the better. Question number 3, how can I re-employ a leaver? So if someone has left and came back, you do need to create a brand new employee record for them. But to make it a bit quicker, you can copy the personal details from the original employee leaver record. So you would have them highlighted before going into Employee Wizard or Quick Employee. And then question number 4, what if I receive a P45 or start a checklist after the first FPS? If you've not received a tax code from HMRC, you can use a starter form wizard to enter the details. So it might be that HMRC kind of beat that employee to the mark and send you the information first. If that's the case, then just regard it and use the information that HMRC have sent you. But if you've not received anything, then feel free to pop them in using that starter form wizard. So that's it on starters today. I'll hand you over to Duncan now, who'll take you through processing leavers.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So we've just seen there the process for taking on an employee who is starting their journey with you as a brand new starter. But I'm going to look at the other end where an employee is leaving you. So we're going to focus on the tasks that you need to complete to process their final pay run, and then how to produce the P45 and submit those details to HMRC. So first thing I want to just discuss briefly is things that you would need to consider when processing the final payment for a leaver. And I've put together some bullet points on the slide here of a few points to keep in mind. So one of the most important things is to establish whether you've included all outstanding payments and deductions that are due to that employee. So for example, if you pay them a fixed salary and they're leaving in the middle of the month rather than the end of the month, you might need to work out manually how much salary they need to receive up until their leaving date. But there may well be other payments that are due to the employee, sometimes payments that are usually paid in arrears, such as overtime or bonus payments, or consider things like holiday pay. If an employee hasn't taken all the holiday they're entitled to, you may need to do a holiday pay payment as part of their final pay run. So it's really trying to get all of the final payments done in that final pay run, as that avoids having to make an extra payment after leaving, which can become slightly more complicated. Second thing to look at is whether they're receiving a statutory payment, particularly statutory parental payments. Now, in a lot of cases, if an employee is receiving SMP and then for whatever reason they decide to leave in the middle of their maternity leave, you may need to pay them the remaining SMP as a lump sum with their final pay, or you'd need to continue paying them their SMP until that was due to end. So it is possible to process a lump sum payment, and there are some circumstances, for example, if the employee has started a new job after the baby was born, in which you would not have to pay out the full statutory pay. And you can always seek advice from HMRC if you're unsure. A couple of other things, are you paying the employee early? So if they need to be paid ahead of your usual pay date, you can process a separate pay run with just that employee selected, but remember to set your process date back to the date that they're actually going to receive that pay. And if you're dealing with a director and they're on the pro rata basis, which means that the national insurance is calculated using weekly or monthly tables, they will need to have their NI recalculated in the final pay run using annual thresholds and rates. And again, there's an option in the software that will help you do that. Last thing to consider, and this isn't a particularly nice one, but if the employee has passed away, their final payment would not be subject to national insurance. So you'd create a pay element that's still taxable, but not subject to NI when processing those payment amounts. And you can read more about these considerations if you follow the link there in the slide. So quite a lot to think about there, but when it comes to processing a final payment, there is a feature in the software that will do certain checks in the background for an employee, and it could well alert you to items that might be outstanding and need to be dealt with in the final pay run. So it's the checkbox at the bottom of Enter Payments. It says select this checkbox if your employee is leaving and this is their final payment. And we do strongly recommend that you use that checkbox for employees who are leaving. To explain what it does, number one, it recalculates directors' national insurance for directors on the pro rata basis. The employee is paid in cash. It pays any cash rounding amounts that are due to them. It pays out any outstanding holiday fund, if you use our holiday fund feature, as well as tax refunds that were withheld due to a trade dispute. And you would also see some messages with calculations about any outstanding holiday or statutory payments. So we're going to show you some examples of where you'll need to use that checkbox in the demo. So let's bring that to life now for you. If I just bring the slides down, we're going to jump into a demonstration. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my pay date to my next usual pay date, the last day of the month. So I've got 2 leavers this month, but they are still going to be paid on the date that they are usually paid, 30th of September in this example. And what I can then do is I can select the employee. I'm just going to select one of my leavers, employee 5. And then when I go into the enter payment screen, I can then enter the details of their final pay. As you can see, this is a salaried employee. Usually they get a fixed salary for the whole month. But I know that this employee is actually leaving on the 19th of September. So I've worked out manually how much I need to pay them in salary up to their leaving date. So you can make an adjustment either to the hours or number value, or perhaps to the rate. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to use this little calculator. As I've calculated that I want to pay them for 15 out of a possible 22 working days this month. So I'm going to do 15 divided by 22. And by adjusting the hours or number value, that has reduced my employee's salary. Now that's just one example of how you might adjust an employee's pay if they're not being paid for a full period. But you'll have your own process in place, and it might be documented in the employee's contract as to how you work out salary for a part period. So obviously just follow your usual process when you come to do this. So we then need to think about any other payments. Have they taken all of their holiday? Are they owed any overtime, bonus payments, anything like that? So we don't in this case have any additional payments that we need to make, but I am going to use this checkbox at the bottom of the screen. That'll run some other checks in the background. And as you can see, it's just popped up with a message telling me that I'll now need to update my records to ensure the tax and NI details are correct, and then process the leaver details before we make our full payment submission for the pay period. And we'll talk more about the order in which you do things a little bit later on. So it hasn't recalculated any payments for that particular employee, but I'm pretty confident that I've entered the correct final payments for this employee who is leaving. Now, I do want to show you another employee who is leaving this month. Now, this employee, if I just go into their record and select the absence tab, they're actually on maternity leave at the moment. So if I go into the SMP details at the bottom of the screen, you can see it started kind of back in January, a couple of weeks before the due date. And looking at the entitlement, they've been paid for 31 weeks. And this month they were going to be getting 4.29 weeks. And they are approaching kind of the end of that full entitlement. So they've been on maternity leave for about 36 weeks come the end of this month. Nevertheless, though, they have chosen to leave, and as far as I know, they're not going on to a new job. So this means that when we do the final payment, we will need to ensure that we've paid them all of the SMP that is currently due. So when I go into the enter payment screen for the employee, they're just on statutory pay, so I haven't got any salary details entered. And I know that this employee has already taken all of the holiday that they were owed. When I go to the summary tab, it shows the SMP has been calculated up to the current process date, which is the 30th of September. Sorry, without the box ticked. This is the SMP that they've been paid up to the current process date. I thought it was a bit high. So it's the 4.29 weeks, £802.20. But if I then select the checkbox to say they're leaving and it's their final payment, we get the same message as before, describing the next steps. But we can now also see the lump sum statutory maternity pay has been calculated up to the end of the 39-week entitlement. So they are now going to receive the remainder of their SMP. It does mean that they've gone above the primary threshold for national insurance this month, so they're paying some national insurance on that lump sum. They've also got a bit of pension being deducted as well. So I just wanted to show you that that checkbox in this case has recalculated the parental pay. So there I have two employees where I've already entered their final payments. I would then complete my pay run in the usual way. So you would run your payment summary reports and your pay slips. So you'd print or upload those in the normal way. And then you would need to update the records as that message mentioned. So if I go to the update records wizard, I can take a pre-update backup at this point. Once I've done that, I would run through and update records for my monthly employees. And what that has done now is it's recorded that final payment in the employee's history. It's now included in that employee's year-to-date values, which means when we print the P45, it's going to contain the correct totals for that employee. And you can see there's even a reminder after you update records to use the leaver wizard for anyone leaving your employment, and then complete the full payment submission. So let's just take a quick breather at that point. So we've just seen there entering final payments for leavers. So you can use the checkbox to check for any outstanding items. And don't forget to do any manual adjustments where required to your employee's salary. We're now ready to move on to the leaver wizard. This is where the order and everything is really important. So we've done the final payment, we can tick that off. We've ran update records. We then run the leaver wizard to produce the P45, and then we move on to the full payment submission. Now what the leaver wizard does is it enables you to record the employee's last day of work, their leaving date, and then it'll give you a selection of reports you can run. So you could run P11 reports for your own records, but the one that you must print or email, if you prefer, is the P45, which you would then give to your employee, who can then take that to their next employer. So let's take a look at the leaver wizard now. First thing is a quick check that we've updated records for this period. So if I review the last updated column, I can see that it's showing 30th of September, which was the last pay date for these two leavers. I'm going to process the leavers one at a time because they do have different leave dates in this example. So I'll start by selecting employee 5 in the list. That's the employee that left on the 19th of September. And then if you're on your payroll tasks, if you look in the links section, there is a link to make an employee a leaver. Alternatively, we can go to the employee tasks and you would find the leaver option from here. So clicking leaver takes us into the leaver wizard, just describes what it's going to do. We then click onto next. We can then record the employee's last day of work. So for this employee, it's the 19th of September. There is a checkbox that you would tick if the employee has passed away, which isn't the case for me. And then in this drop-down list, this is where you could print P11 reports for your own records. It gives you a breakdown of the pay and statutory deductions. Or you could go straight to the P45. So use the plain paper layout. It's very rare to have stationery for P45s these days. So choose plain paper for e-submissions. And then you can either print directly from this print button, or if you want to view it first, you can preview the P45. And as we can see here, there are 3 pages all in all. So part 1 is the employee's copy, part 1A. So they're going to keep that for their own records. Got some of their details, kind of information about their previous employer. Part 2, they're going to give to their new employer. So it shows the tax code, pay, and tax to date. So this is what Sarah showed you in the starters demo, including the leaving date. And then there's also a part 3, which generally they would also give to the new employer. The new employer just keeps hold of that these days, as starter and leaver details are all now submitted in the FPS. So that can be printed out. There's also an export option if you wanted to save a PDF for your own records. That could be quite handy. And then once you've printed or saved the report, you can close out and then click Finish to complete the leaver wizard. So as you can see, that has set the current status to leaver. And if I look within the employee record, there is now a leave date, and this is recorded here on the Employment tab. Now, just to deal with my other employee, I'm going to run the leaver wizard a slightly different way, as you can do this in the employee record as well. So I'm going to the Employment tab, and you can see the leaver option at the bottom. That takes me into the leaver wizard. And for this one, the leaving date is the last day of the month. So the 30th of September. And again, I can choose P45 for plain paper, I can print it out directly, or I can preview it first. So exactly the same steps to produce that P45. You can see that's now entered the leave date. And again, it has set the current status to leaver. Now, if you prefer, it is also possible to email the P45, and it uses the same settings as email payslips. So if you've entered a password, which we strongly recommend you do for these types of document, the employee would need to enter that password in order to kind of view their P45. So it's the details entered on the Analysis tab. If you've got this set up to send via email, got your email address and password entered, you'll be able to email P45s as well. To do that, you would complete the leaver wizard without printing the P45. Just click Finish, go into the main reports option at the top here. And then if you look in the employee folder here on the left-hand side and scroll down to the Ps, you've got your P45s that can be sent using Outlook, or a P45 that can be sent using SMTP settings, for example, webmail settings that you've already saved in Report Designer. So I could use one of these options to attach the P45 to an email and send that to the employee. So here's where we're at now. We've done our final payment and updated records. I've just ran the leaver wizard, so I've produced that P45. If you do need to do it via email, in the handout, I have linked to our step-by-step guide, just in case you need a hand with that. And our final step is to submit our FPS, as we would usually do at the end of the pay run. And that will then send the leaver details to HMRC, including the leaving date, so that they will know that the employee has left your employment. Now, one other thing to keep in mind is that you must also notify your pension provider when employees leave your employment, And the process will vary depending on who your pension provider is. So if you're not sure how to notify them, if you speak to your pension provider, check their help files, they should let you know how you can inform them about a leaver. But in terms of informing HMRC, that's all now done in your full payment submission. So let's complete the demo and show you that step now. So returning to my payroll tasks, my next step now is the full payment submission. And a quick tip, if you're ever unsure what order to do things in, there is a process map in Payroll. So you can click onto View at the top of the screen, change View, and then Process Map. And then if you look through this, you see you can work left to right, and Process Levers comes before sending your full payment submission. So handy way to remember the order if you need a reminder. So I'm going to click on Full Payment Submission now. This is going to send my pay and deduction details to HMRC. So I'd click on to continue, as I normally do. Once I've checked my details, I'd click on to submit. And because we have levers in this submission, you'll see leave dates. We entered in the lever wizard, and they will be included in the information sent to HMRC. So we just need to send this on or before pay date in the usual way. And once it's complete, you'll see the submission has been successful. And that is it done. We've produced our P45, we've informed HMRC. And if we want to remove that lever from our list of active employees, you can do so by going into your criteria here at the top. And then if you look at the bottom, you can exclude employees on hold, on holiday, current year leavers, and then historical leavers should be hidden by default. So if you do want to hide them once you've finished with your pay run, you can always tick this box, removes them from the list, and then bring them back. Just come back and clear the box. So yeah, that is submitting the lever details as part of your FPS. So what we're going to finish off on for levers is some common questions. So a bit like Sarah, I've picked top 5 questions for levers here. So question number 1, we've just answered this in the demo actually. Can I hide levers from my employee list? And the answer is yes. They can be excluded from the criteria settings. So once you've done with your payroll, posted your nominal link, etc., you can exclude current year leavers and historical leavers by selecting those boxes from your criteria settings. Question 2, I forgot to mark an employee as a leaver and I've submitted the FPS. So haven't done things quite in the right order. You've updated the records for that final payment, but then you skipped ahead to the FPS before running the lever wizard. Don't panic. You can run the lever wizard after you send the FPS to record the leaving date. And then if you haven't moved on to your next pay run, if you haven't done any further submissions, all you need to do is to submit an FPS adjustment. So that will just send through the leaving details as an additional submission after the original one was sent. Now, if you did it in the wrong order and then you moved on to your next pay run, the leaving details will have actually been picked up in the next FPS. But if you've seen that mistake earlier, you can send it through ahead of time with an FPS adjustment. Question 3, I've processed a leaver, but I forgot to update their final payment. So again, you've done things in the wrong order here. You've entered the final payments, but instead of updating records, you ran the lever wizard at that point. This means the P45 you produced is incorrect. It doesn't have all of the payments that were made to the employee on them. So what you need to do is to destroy that P45. You can then open the employee record, and on the employment tab, you can delete the leave date. And then when you save the record, that effectively reactivates it. You would then set your process date and check that the final payments are correctly entered in Enter Payments. You would then run Update Records. for that particular employee that was missed out, and then you can run the Leaver Wizard again. Once you've run the Leaver Wizard, send the FPS for that employee, and that will then submit the details. Question 4, I processed a leaver by mistake and submitted the FPS. So maybe you had the wrong employee selected when you ran the Leaver Wizard, or you had more than one employee selected. This is quite a simple fix. All you need to do is to delete the leaving date from the employee that was processed by mistake, and then continue to use their existing employee record. And when you do your next FPS, because it will include payment values for the employee still employed by you, that confirms to HMRC that they haven't left. So they will class that as continuous employment. And the last one here, can I give an employee extra pay after I've made them a leaver? And the answer is yes, it is possible. It depends when you're making that extra payment as to what process you would follow. So if you're paying them in the same period as their original final payment, you can use the rollback wizard or restore a backup, and then simply add the extra pay that they were due to the original payments, then update records, and you can send an FPS adjustment for them. Or if it's going to be in a different pay period, a future pay period, there is a specific process you would follow. It's kind of outlined on this slide, but I've also linked to our step-by-step guide. So if it was in the same period, it's restore or rollback, run the Leaver Wizard, submit FPS adjustment. If the payment is being made in a later period, you would need to delete the leaving date, amend the tax code to 0T on a week 1, month 1 basis, process the extra payment in the period you're going to pay it. You may need to do manual national insurance for certain irregular payments. And then once you've updated records, you would re-enter the original leaving date and you would include them in the FPS. So I don't have time to show you that process, but you can read the step-by-step. I've linked to the guide there on the slide. So just 5 of the common questions around leavers. And that brings us to the end of what we're going to cover in today's webinar. So before you leave, I do want to just quickly run through some of the further support that's available and give you the chance to read through the Q&A and to ask any final questions that you may have. So we will stick around a few minutes longer. In terms of upcoming webinars, this is part of our National Payroll Week webinar series. We're celebrating Payroll Week, which is actually last week, and giving you the opportunity to earn a digital badge. So to get your badge, you need to attend 3 out of the first 4 sessions. So all of these sessions are taking place this week, if you weren't able to attend last week, plus our Payroll Week quiz, which will be on Thursday, 11th of September at 2 p.m. So you will need to register using the same email address, and you can find all the details on our website, sage.co.uk/webinars. Further support can also be found on our help centre, sage.co.uk/help, or by clicking the help icons in your programme, as well as at Sage University. So that's at sageu.com, where you'll find all of our e-learning, online certification and bite-sized learning. And that has pretty much brought us to the end of today's webinar. So on behalf of myself and Sarah, thanks so much for joining us at this session. Do get yourself signed up to our other National Payroll Week webinars. It'd be great for you to earn your digital badge and to brush up on your payroll knowledge, including our National Payroll Week quiz, which this week will be on Thursday. Don't forget to complete the survey if you get a chance when you leave us today, and keep an eye out on your emails for the follow-up email with the link to the recording. So with that said, we're going to wrap things up there. Thanks once again for joining us, and we will see you on the next one. It's goodbye for now.